Okay, Dora, are you ready? I'm going to introduce you in two languages since we have like an international audience here. So Dora Palfi is a co-founder, my friend, and CEO of imagiLabs, an educational tech startup that creates fun and easy ways for girls to get started with gadgets and programming. Dora has an unconventional path because she studied neuroscience at NYU Abu Dhabi before switching to computer science. She worked as a developer at Cisco, and then later she worked as a designer at Cisco and worked as a developer at Morgan Stanley. In 2020, Dora has been named as the Cartier Womens Iniative Fellow, as well as selected Forbes Hungary 30 under 30 list. She has years of experience teaching coding to children and teenagers. She's an advocate for women in technology. We're super excited to see her here. Дора Палфи, она соучредитель и CEO imagiLabs, также моя хорошая подруга. Она открыла imagiLabs, это стартап в сфере образовательных технологий, который создает гаджеты, которые ты можешь программировать сам. У Доры не традиционный путь, потому что она изучала вначале неврологию в Нью-Йоркском университете Абу-Даби, прежде чем переключиться на информатику. Она работала разработчиком в Morgan Stanley, позже была UX-дизайнером в Cisco. Была названа стипендиантом женской инициативы Cartier, а также вошла в список Forbes Венгрии. У нее многолетний опыт обучения программирования детей и подростков. Она выступает, я думаю, за всех женщин в сфере технологий. Dora, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me here. I'm really excited to be part of this event and so excited to see so many participants as well. So I hope we can make it a insightful and fun conversation and presentation for you. So I have prepared some slides, which I will start with sharing. And as it's been introduced, my company imagiLabs is equipping and empowering girls to create with technology and shape the future essentially with technology. But before I get into the details of my presentation, I wanted to start with a bit of an interaction. So I hope most of you have either obviously have your computers in front of you, but you could just use your phones for this activity. I would like to, let's see, ask you to help me out with this poll. So I'm hoping you can see this tool that I'm using. It's called Mentimeter. It's also a Swedish startup. And if you head to www.menti.com and use the code that you can see at the top here, you'll be able to vote on this poll. So what I would love to learn about is whether most of us here have a formal, informal, or no computer science tech educational background. And I hope this will work.
Dora, you sharing a link, right?
Oh yeah, sorry, no. So if you head to this website, the instruction is at the top here, menti.com. And then you put in the code 5177939, then you'll be able to vote on the option.
Awesome.
And I will wait a little so we can see how's everyone's not necessarily knowledge of computer science, but exposure to technology and computer science. And I see we have a good mix so far. So I'll just wait a few more seconds. And please don't put your phones away because we will move on to vote for a second question. And the reason why I'm asking this, because I'm curious how many have studied computer science. So as we mentioned in the introduction, I have studied neuroscience at NYU Abu Dhabi. But during my studies, I also started to take some computer science classes. And so I have some formal education in computer science and technology. But while I was studying, what I experienced in my classrooms is that I was one of the few female students. So I like to do this poll worldwide, no matter in which country I'm speaking or what type of audience, so that I can see whether the gender ratio in computer science classes is different around the globe. Okay. So, okay. So usually when we do this in real world conferences, in real life, by a show of hands, it's a similar experience. So the majority of us who have studied computer science in the classroom have experienced that there were more male students than female students. And today, what I would like to address is, in the first part, why this is even a problem, why we should care about this. And in the second part of this presentation, of how we could potentially solve this, or what is the approach that I have taken in my work. So I'll jump back to my presentation. Thank you so much for your votes and for contributing. So let me start with a quick background story. So there was a recent article written about imagiLabs and our work, and it was mentioned in the introduction that I'm originally from Hungary, and that's probably not a fact that you would know, but in Hungarian we don't have gender pronouns. And what is interesting is that once this article that has been written about imagiLabs was translated through Google Translate to English, a lot of my friends started sending me messages asking me, why do they refer to you as he in the article? And due to the fact that there's no gender pronouns in Hungarian, when Google Translate, or really any translating algorithm, takes Hungarian and puts it to English, it has to make sort of an educated guess. What is the gender of the person in the discussion? And so due to the fact that the article was about a tech startup and a tech CEO, Google Translate decided that I most likely be male. And this is not a one occasion or one case example. So Google Translate has had been pointed out to do this with many languages. So for example, if you would translate from English to Spanish, the doctor talking to the nurse, it would be assumed that the doctor is male and that the nurse is female. Now, this problem has been addressed, or there are improvements being made to the algorithms and to the translations, but clearly it is a problem that that arises because of both a bias in the data and among the creators of technologies. Now, another example I like to point out, this is from last winter. In December, when Apple released their Apple Card, it's been pointed out that actually men had way higher credit limits than women, even though their credit scores were not better. And so this happened to multiple people. So this went on Twitter, and the question was, why is it so? So Apple said that it was through Goldman Sachs, the bank behind the card algorithms, that women happen to get these lower credit scores, credit limits, sorry. And so here the question is, like, what is really behind these algorithms, and can we blame algorithms for making these mistakes and for being gender biased? And the technology in itself being gender biased is one problem, but to my mind, what's also a bigger problem is that technology underlies so much of what we do. So if you're interested in startup culture, you probably know about Y Combinator, which is sort of one of the biggest source of startup knowledge and the really famous incubator. And the founders of Y Combinator always say that you should always start startups that are solving problems that you yourself have. And then the question is, what happens to the people's problems who are not in technology? Who's going to create startups for them? Who's going to create technologies and products for them? And so I really like to sort of summarize my thoughts and ideas in a logical manner. So essentially, the thesis that we have, or what I have with my work, is that if technology is the future, which I firmly believe, and women are not equally involved in technology, and today in the EU, and this is similar statistics in the US, we make up less than 20% of the tech workforce, then women essentially don't have an equal chance to shape the future with technology. And so that is what we want to change. And actually, the crazy thing is that the 16.5% that was the EU statistics on women's involvement in the tech workforce in Europe was actually a really low number. that really got me thinking, why is this? And so I was lucky to attend the Grace Hopper Celebration, which is a really big conference for women in tech. And actually, that's where I met Alia. And I saw that there were a lot of women in tech. And the Grace Hopper Celebration, it grew from 150 people in 2016, 15,000 people from 500 in 1994. So clearly, there's a lot of interest for technology from women, by women, for women. And what I also learned attending a lot of women in tech conferences and events is that there's incredible technologies that are created by women, and there are solutions that women can see that perhaps haven't been addressed before. So one example to that would be Clue, which is a period tracking app, right? Women see opportunities for markets and products that were not addressed before, or they can see new solutions to the same problem, such as the dating scene and how a Bumble is addressing the same space as Tinder did before, but a very different approach. And so essentially understanding that diversity makes us smarter and that advancing equality advances our economy, it's really been sort of the big question for me. Then why is it that there is not more of us women in tech? And so what I was mentioning before, the 16.5% in 2018 is actually a decrease of women's participation from 10 years ago. So while the tech sector is growing, the percentage of women in tech is not, or it hasn't been for the past decade. And so, as I mentioned, there's a lot of really cool initiatives, and actually like today's event also that involves adult women with technology, and it's really exciting that we can build a community around the interest. And I also have found that there's a lot of advocates for sort of starting early and involving young women with technology and programming. So these are some toys and tools. There are examples that kids use to learn coding, and there is a really great variety of them. But what I also learned is that when we are around age 11, girls and boys still have a similar interest for technology. So when we're really young, we don't have this sort of knowledge yet that technology is not so much for girls and women. But what happens is that by the age of 16, so in teenage years, this interest dramatically drops. And so that's where I saw sort of the biggest gap. And that big gap to be essentially addressed. How will we carry from a young girl's interest for technology and science all the way to starting university studies in computer science, and how will we change that classroom ratio that most of us here have experienced? So so let's get into sort of the second half, which is about teaching teenage girls to code so that we could really fix that gender gap in tech. And so to a bit of background here and getting into like the more technical part of it, I have a background in computer science as well. I worked as a developer, but I did my master's degree in a field called human computer interaction and focusing on user-centered design. So I had a prompt for a design project, which was to level the playing field through user-centered design. So what I did, I worked together with teenage girls. And this process was extremely fun and extremely rewarding. And I believe it is a really good way to create new products. It means essentially just bringing together the people that you want to build a product for, that you want to solve a problem for, and brainstorming both the problem and the solution together. So at this point, we've involved hundreds of girls with this process, what we call a future workshop. And there are a couple things that we found out were really important for young girls. And some of that was self-expression and how we like to be creative and showing the world our ideas and our opinions. Then how important sort of a community is and doing things with our friends. Then most girls really enjoy having tangible experiences. And then finally, sort of a big insight, but it's not a surprise at all, is how much teenagers love their phones. And that's the number one technology that they use, even over computers. So bringing all of these sort of insights together, that's how we created our first product, the imagiCharm. So what you can see here on this image, both to the left and to the right, is the imagiCharm, which is a programmable accessory, which I also have right here. So this gadget is something that you can hang on your bag and you can wear it around the world, and you can customize it with code. So you can customize it by writing Python code. What happens is that in the app, you create with a script-based language with Python. You can then upload that to your gadget so you can wear it. And you can also share your projects in the app so that you can learn from others in the community and others can learn from you. You can support other users through your comments and through your questions. I'm actually going to, again, do something new, sorry. I will actually show my phone screen. Hopefully this will work. 1 second. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so hopefully you can see my phone screen now. And this is the imagiLabs app. When you open it up, you see all these coding projects that were created by other users and shared by other users. You have a section in our app where you can learn to code through tutorials. And then you have the part of the app where you actually create with code. So what I thought I would do here at first is show you a built-in function that we have, which is called scrolling text. And for those of you who know Python, this will take a string first, which I thought could be nice to write the name of the conference that we're at. So let me type that up. And then choose a color. Perhaps let's make that one aqua, turquoise today, and then run my code. And what you can see is that this built-in function actually runs this scrolling text animation, which I can also upload to the gadget. So if I switch this on now, you see that I'm connecting over Bluetooth. And then if you see my video, you also see the code uploaded to the device. So you could go from here, which is sort of like the first step of getting introduced to Python programming. I could also add, for example, a background color to this function. So I will pass, let's make that one pink. So we have both blue and pink. I run the code, I upload it again, and now you see that I even added a background to my scrolling text. So this is sort of a really quick first step into how you can do programming on the imagiLabs app and on the imagiCharm. But there's a lot more to it. There are animations that you can create. There are more useful applications. One of our favorite is actually turning your imagiCharm into a dice. So for example, sorry, 1 second, there it is. When you run your code, it can randomly pick a number. So as if you were playing a board game and you had to pick a number. Let me jump back over to my presentation. 1 second. So why is this important? Why do you think that this is sort of a good way to start coding? So when I first took a computer science class, I knew nothing about programming. This was in university. And it was extremely intimidating. So I remember being so confused and concerned and not really being motivated by the project that we were creating in class and not really seeing how it had a real world application. And I remember complaining about this to my professor, and then he tried to make me do a useful project. And so we spent about 20 minutes building a program that could take in my birth date and would tell me how old I was. And to me, that was really not so useful. It didn't make me think, wow, computers are so smart, because, you know, I as a human can also say how old somebody is based on their birthday. So I really felt this disconnect between having to start to write code and you've been 10 weeks into computer science and you're really not feeling that exciting outcome of it yet. So instead, what we aim to do with the imagiCharm and the imagiLabs app is sort of make coding more like baking, or I like to use this analogy, as if you were baking a cake where you know what is going to be the end result, what it's going to look like, and then you follow along with the recipe and you learn along the way as you're going through the steps. So yes, I wanted to quickly show you here again how the basics of the coding works in the app, but essentially it's almost similar to a chessboard. So what you see here is that you can individually address the LEDs of the matrix that we have on the imagiTarm. You can turn one LED on. So for example, this white spot here on the slide that you see is in the second row and in the fourth column. So that's how you learn to individually address the LEDs. And then with that, you can go on and create, for example, your first heart. So here is a magenta heart where every single LED that has been addressed is turned to the color variable magenta set through D. But that would be really, really tiring to just individually address every single LED. So usually how we sort of move on from the first step is through asking our users and participants to go from just the heart to a rainbow. But imagine if you had to program this rainbow just with the technique that I showed earlier. This would take 64 lines of code. But instead, if you learn how to use for loops, you can actually turn on an entire row with just one or two lines of code. So what we try to do here is really make it more tangible so that you feel like, okay, I'm learning a coding concept that's speeding up my coding process and making me more efficient. And then from there, really the ambition is that you can go into creating animations. And eventually our plan is to turn it into a platform where you can also make small games. But what's really beautiful about it and what our users create with it is how sort of similarly to when you're learning a language, like some of us really enjoy being creative. And I've heard this analogy before where, you know, some people learn a language through poetry and music, and some people really enjoy grammar. And it's sort of like that with programming, or that's the message that we want to convey. You can really focus on creating colors and being creative, or you can really focus on the logical aspects of it, whatever is sort of closer to your heart. Then I already mentioned the pillar, which is the community. And I think probably most of us who attend an event like this already feel that sense of belonging and understand how that's an important component. And then we have these tutorials in the app to actually learn to code, which is the third pillar. So at this point you might think, okay, wow, but how will like a gadget really make that difference? And I love this quote from Steve Blank, which is about how disruption on the first day always looks like a toy. And starting with just a toy on the first day, how that can actually become really powerful. So something that we aim to show is how progress really comes through practice, and our users can see that. So obviously, coding is not so simple that it doesn't require thinking. That's not the point. The point is to learn that you can make progress. And then it's extremely important to learn how errors or mistakes are actually your friends. And when it comes to programming, it's extra true. Error messages are there to guide you. So that's something that's really important for our teaching methodology as well, that you get the mistakes that you make and see that they're actually not mistakes, they're opportunities to learn. So here is just a bit of a feedback. So the way how we've been working has been through a lot of feedback with girls. And what I mentioned we see is extremely important is this instant feedback, but also having challenge. And I just wanted to give a bit of background, like how did we get to this product from an idea and from that workshop with girls. So we had a Kickstarter campaign. This was in the summer of 2019. And after that was successfully funded, we went into manufacturing these gadgets, and we just delivered them to our first backers earlier this summer. So that's been an exciting 1-year journey of going from a Kickstarter project to an actual existing product. We also had some B2B customers and lots of partners. We had amazing opportunities to attend events like Google for Startups Female Founder Program. We've had the opportunity to spend 2 weeks at Apple's headquarters, working together with Apple designers and engineers to really revamp the design of our app. And we've also had some financing. We've raised some funding from angel investors. So I guess just like really towards the end of this presentation, I want to point out that I think what's also interesting is that there's a lot of tools out there to learn programming, and more, like every day there is tools online to learn coding. And so what we're really trying to get to here is that like half of the solution is making a product that is exciting and can be used to learn coding, but the other half of it, which I think as an engineer or someone coming from a tech background, I really sort of underestimated in the beginning, is how you have to deliver your product in a way that makes it easy for your users or intended users to start using it. But even before that, to deliver it to the world in a way where your intended users will actually know about it. And so sort of getting the tools to the people who need them to the way that actually encourages them to use it, that's extremely hard. But like an exciting challenge that we are working on right now. And then finally, of course, this is not a work that I've been doing alone or would be able to do alone. I have an incredible team, and here are my co-founders, Beatrice and Paula. So we are 3 women behind the company. Beatrice has a background in electrical engineering and machine learning, and Paula has worked as a software engineer. And I managed to convince both of them to leave big tech companies and opportunities at tech companies like Spotify and Google and Goldman Sachs and come work on a startup, which has been an extremely exciting journey. So to finish off, we have this definition of what we call an Imagi Girl. So these are our super users who are gaining the skills and the confidence to shape the future with tech. And really sort of as a full loop, what my biggest hope is that learning to code is sort of the first step, but the more girls and women we have who are in technology, the more products we will be creating for girls and women. And that sort of becomes like a positive reinforcement cycle where it will be becoming more and more appealing for girls and young women to get into technology, seeing more role models and seeing more products that were created for them by people who are similar to them. So that's actually all I prepared as a presentation because I was hoping we could have more of a conversation, and I'm extremely happy to answer any questions about tech and startups and yeah, how it is to start your own company. So thank you for that.
Dora, thank you so much for your presentation. I loved listening to it. I'm pretty sure everyone else as well. I want to open up a Q&A session, so if you guys have questions, please leave it in the chat box. Если у вас есть вопросы, можете оставить их там, можете на 2 языках. So we could start off with some questions. What do you think, Dora? We start off?
Yes, of course.
Awesome. So since we're also YouTube streaming, we have one question from Dinara Kulubayeva. Where do you get financial sponsorship for these activities, teaching girls?
Yes. So we operate on a for-profit model. So we're actually, a for-profit startup, not a nonprofit, but we are an impact-driven startup. So this is, I would say, like a more emerging model where we're trying to kind of like combine together impact and financial return. So this way we could actually grow our impact bigger. So what this means is that we have been actually working on this as our job. So we have been paid for running workshops from certain clients, and then we would do it for free for others who might not be able to afford it. So when we started out, we were running workshops, and it was a mix of actually getting paid by perhaps tech companies who want to support such initiatives. And then with our product, that is sort of the key to growing and in a way that's financially sustainable. So we are selling our products, and that is also a source of revenue. But so it's been a mix of startup capital from incubators, from angel investors. We've gotten grants, and also actually charging for the value that we're creating.
Thank you so much for such a thorough answer. Next question would be from Nazirke. Is there anything that you do in the everyday life that has helped you reach success in your work?
Things I do in everyday life. I think, well, in general, probably just being persistent and like consistency. I think in most things that you want to achieve, it's probably not going to come easy. So sticking with something and being committed to something, and finding that thing that you feel like is worth committing to is probably the most helpful. Um, on on the other hand, I also am a yoga teacher and I do a lot of yoga and exercise, and I would definitely recommend. I think, yeah, just like healthy living really helps with being able to focus on your work and do your best at work.
That's amazing. I've also seen that you started teaching yoga to engineers, correct?
Right, yeah, I teach yoga at the university where I studied as well. So yeah.
That's awesome. Really good initiative, I think. Another question from Bode. After someone learned to program with imagiLabs, what would you recommend as next steps for girls interested in tech?
Right. So yeah, so we're still a new startup, and right now we are focusing on developing the curriculum that would deliver essentially sort of like an introduction to computer science level that you would gain in your first coding class or in high school. And of course, we see opportunities like moving up from there. But I would say there's a lot of cool like free resources online. And of course, when I learned to code, I also used Code Academy. So in our minds, we are both developing additional content that will be the next step, but also sort of just pointing girls towards additional resources that are out there. Maybe I will soon be writing a blog post with more resources because I think that would be needed. But I would say that that's sort of our hope, that we can be this entry point, and through our community, we also have a Discord community where we could share additional resources to move forward.
Speaking about the community, Bode asked another question. How big is the imagiLabs community?
Yes, so we have in total right now, so we have on our iOS app around 1,100 coders. And then on our Android app, which didn't have the community feature yet because it's been just released like a month and a half ago, another couple hundred. And then on our Discord server, we also have around 400 people. So I don't know if you're familiar with Discord, but yeah, that's also just a platform where you can ask questions.
That's awesome. Another question is, does imagiLabs have delivery to Kazakhstan? I think some girls are interested in imagiCharms.
Yes, we do deliver. Actually, so you just check out our website and then you can see delivery details. Yeah, imagiLabs.com.
Okay. Another question from Alona is, what do you think about the future of education? And will it eventually move towards online after the pandemic ends? I think that's a good question.
Yes, that's a great question. I think, so I love that question because I think with the pandemic, at the first like 1 month, everyone was only thinking about, okay, oh my God, like what is going to happen like right now? How are we going to teach in the next month or 2 months or 3 months? And now more and more people are thinking about how it's going to sort of like change everything in the long run. And definitely it has accelerated I mean, there's already sort of movement towards digital education, but this has really accelerated this change because people were just forced into starting to teach online. So I definitely think that it's having a huge impact, and there's going to be more and more remote learning and more sort of like on-demand online learning. But on the other hand, I would say I think there's still a huge value in sort of a real world interaction, and so I wouldn't expect that being completely removed, and I think it shouldn't. So I think it's just going to be more like a blended and more flexible model, where there should be more personalized content available on demand and digitally.
That's great. I think like some people call it hybrid as well, right? I think
Oh
some
yeah.
universities are going back to online and they have campus classes as well. Thank you so much for your answer. Rabina Abdurrahmanova saying, thank you for the presentation. I really like its interactivity. If you could travel back to the time when you just started your path, would you like to choose a certain field of IT and work there? If yes, which one? And then that startup, and if you start a startup, or would you repeat your path? Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm very much of a person who is always like not, I guess, regretting any of the choices because I'm really happy with where I am and what I'm working on, and I love it. And sort of, every decision and choice and path in the past has led here. So wouldn't want to change that. I think when I was starting out in university, like computer science at my school was really, really small. And there was no sort of interactive media, which now is like a very popular field. And I think if I was to study now, I would probably choose something like that, because I love how you can have more like multidisciplinary studies with computer science. But I mean, I wouldn't change anything going back, but I think it's super cool that now there is other fields. And I think like the biggest thing for me is that I did actually try out a lot of different things. Like I did do UX design, I did some software engineering, and in general, I think it was really cool that I tried a lot of things early on and then sort of committed to the startup. And once I committed, I didn't feel like, oh, but what if I did that? Or what if I did something else? I felt like I had my fair share of trying different fields.
Thank you so much, Dora. I truly believe that your path is really like unique. Another question from Voda is, where do you see imagiLabs in 5 or 10 years?
Oh, great question. Global community for girls learning to code, and also in 10 years, that's like final slide I mentioned. We say this sometimes, but I'm hoping to grow so we can also start investing in startups started by all the girls who first learned to code on the imagiLabs app. So going all the way, sort of like starting to code to filling up this funnel with female tech talent, not just for companies, but also for female funded companies, or female funded startups.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from DR, also related to imagiLabs. Is imagiLabs translated to other language? It would be great to have it translated to Russian and Kazakh for girls in Kazakhstan.
Yes, so right now it's all in English, but I think something that's exciting about the app and the product is that it's extremely visual. So we've had 80-year-olds who don't speak English actually use it without an issue. So that's a good first step, definitely in the future, considering translating some of our materials, potentially working with volunteers. So if you're interested, shoot an email over and we can see if that's something that we could work out together.
Awesome. Another question. You're actually receiving a lot of questions. Damila is asking right now, could you share more about studying in the UAE, Abu Dhabi, life and career perspectives there? Thanks.
Yes, so UAE, I studied at NYU Abu Dhabi, which is an extremely like global program. So we live on campus where there were students from probably almost every country in the world, really. So it was an extremely rewarding and exciting experience in that sense. I also got to study and live in other campuses of NYU. So in New York, I studied in Madrid at a time as well. So I really loved the whole program, and being in the UAE in Abu Dhabi, I really enjoyed the university. I would say, to be completely frank, I don't necessarily have the experience that you would have living in the UAE if it like was outside of the university, because I was only there for the period of the university. But a lot of my classmates and other students from school actually stayed there and have great career opportunities there. So I think it's definitely a good place to be. It has changed a lot since I left, but I really had a good time studying there.
Thank you so much, Dora. We have more questions. We have one question from Islam from YouTube streaming. Mostly social startups are not financially rewarding, I guess. Does the social drive keep you guys awake at night? That's a good question.
So I think, this is an interesting question. And this is something I'm I feel very strongly about, because that's the whole point, right? That it shouldn't be non-financially sustainable and not financially rewarding. Actually, the whole idea is that if you can create a model where impact and financial return goes hand in hand, that's how you can really get the best talent. That's how you can grow the biggest company, and that's how you're going to create the biggest impact. So I think with any startup in the beginning, it's not going to be financially rewarding. So you definitely have to do it for the mission and the first employees, and really the team has to love it and enjoy it and want to create that change. Because also your chances of failing are extremely high. So impact startup or not, like you really have to care about the mission. And then I think this is sort of like a misconception or what we also want to change, that actually you can create financial return and impact. And there's some cool examples of that. You can read more on this topic if you Google for zebra companies, which is the companies that both want to return impact and financial benefits. And yeah, so there's a lot on the topic under zebra companies.
Awesome. I'm going to share the insights later as well with guys. We have another question from Nargiza. Hi, Dora. Are there any life hacks that you use in order to keep your productivity?
Life hacks. Great. Well, I think to keeping up the productivity, I guess like it's important to take breaks as like one of my suggestions. Let me think about it. So definitely exercise and healthy living and sleeping. Sleep is extremely important to be able to stay productive, as well as taking the healthy breaks. What helps me is also, I guess, like planning, like putting the effort into planning, and then also following up on what you've done, like on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a quarterly basis, so that you can actually keep your motivation up. Actually reflecting on how much you've been able to achieve, I think, is probably the best way of sort of building up your confidence and motivation moving forward, because sometimes it's so easy to just get lost in your to-do list of like what's coming up next. But then taking that opportunity to look through like what is that you achieved already really helps with like staying productive and motivated.
That's awesome. I think we have some more questions, so I'll try to go a little faster. So we have a question from Nurgul Kojahmetova. Do you consider that future imagiLabs will support diverse opportunities at IT besides basic coding skills, but something more complicated like machine learning, graphic design for girls?
Yeah, so that's definitely part of the mission. And so we're keeping sort of the whole mission about like girls shaping the future with tech. The idea behind that, right, is that coding is sort of a new literacy, but then there will be new skills needed to succeed in the future and future careers. So the whole idea is that we will have to keep adapting and evolving to teaching the skills that are most important to be able to contribute to the future. So yeah, be it machine learning, but also other skills that are important. Maybe entrepreneurship, you know, like taking the technical skills, we call them sort of like coding superpowers, and applying them to the real world, potentially also financial literacy. So a lot of other possibilities, yes.
That's awesome. We have more questions from Amina. Could you share about your experience as UX designer at Cisco?
Yes. So I was an intern actually at Cisco's Norway office, which has their, so yeah, most of Cisco's design is done in either in the US or in that team in Norway. And it was an extremely rewarding experience for me because they have a huge like sort of in-house design team. So I got to work together with more senior designers. I'm not sure how much I can share beyond this. But I made a fun data visualization that shows some statistics on the things that I've done, how many iterations my project had, and and how many post-its we used up on brainstorming. But it was a good experience to do a UX design internship as part of a bigger design team and as a research design lab, because we had a lot of freedom to experiment with new ideas. But happy to answer more questions if you reach out.
Yeah, I think at the end, Dora would also share her LinkedIn, right? And
Yes.
the ways to contact her.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Boda. We see that gamification and entertaining are changing education, especially self-education. Have you considered to evolve into bigger projects with like Arduino kits for older girls, high schoolers, freshmen to connect coding to hardware?
Right. I think like I love all your questions and all your suggestions, and this is so amazing. And I must say this is probably one of the hardest part of entrepreneurship, where you have all these great ideas and all the things that you want to do, and then you have to just like stay focused. So yes, definitely in the long run, we would love to do like products for older girls, or collaborate with others, just like you said, with Arduino, and go into that sort of space. So like my answer like right now is like it's so hard to say no, but I guess we have to say no to most things so that we can focus on that particular niche that we want to succeed at right now, and then in the future evolve into bigger audiences and for older audiences.
Awesome. We have a question from our YouTube stream, Igerim Sardalina. For programming on iOS, do you use Swift or Objective-C?
Yes, we use Swift.
Swift. Okay, that's it.
But yeah, I'm not the developer of the app, but from what I know, our developer Paula is going to hold a workshop, right?
Yeah.
So I suggest joining that and asking her more questions.
Awesome. We have another question from Jamilia Bayrebekova on YouTube stream. Do we have to have bachelor education to work in computer science programming, or it's not necessary?
Yeah, so I think this is changing a lot right now, and Google made recently announcement of providing sort of a non-university certification. So definitely not. Most tech companies, or well, depends. Some tech companies would still require, some would not. But I think yeah, technology is probably the most sort of like progressive in that sense, where your knowledge and skills matter the most as opposed to your education. I would say though, I think like bachelor's degree is not just necessarily about the coding skills, or that's probably not where you're going to learn most of your programming skills, but on the job. So the education is for other skills and networks, in my experience and opinion.
Awesome. Dora, thank you so much. I think we don't have any more questions right now, and I think we can kindly like thank our speaker, our the only English speaker in our conference. This is the first time we're organizing this, and we're so happy that you were our second speaker today. I think for me, I would like to ask you to maybe give some advices to girls starting out in tech.
Yes. Wow, that's big responsibility. So I think the most important for me is obviously to work on something that you care about and that you enjoy. So that's why I love to talk about coding and tech as sort of like a tool and a superpower to achieve things that you want to achieve. And so that's what I would suggest, kind of like think of it as a tool that you can utilize to solve the problems that you care about, and then just be extremely curious and don't be afraid about making mistakes, because you can only really learn through mistakes. So I guess just be ready for the challenge and find some supportive network like this one, where you can ask questions. And those would be my suggestions.